Welcome to the Blood Flow Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hamill. I'm a physician specializing in blood circulation and a writer based in Paris. Today, my guest is Dr. Susanna Soberg. Dr. Soberg holds a PhD in metabolism and is internationally recognized for her scientific work on cold and heat exposure, nervous system regulation, and the use of contrast therapy to activate metabolism and support long-term health. She is the founder of the Soberg Institute. Her book, Winter Swimming, published in 2022, is an amazing source of information on cold water immersion, and I highly recommend you check it out. You can find her online at soberginstitute.com. Dr. Soberg, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So I'd like to start with two questions. So your book, Winter Swimming, was published, as I said, in 2022. I was wondering what, if anything, you've changed your mind about since publishing the book regarding winter swimming.
What I've changed my mind about? I think that initially when I started my research, I was interested mostly in the metabolic benefits about going into the cold water. But what I found out later on, and I would also say after I published my book, is how that is very much connected to the central nervous system and how that's all connected. So the last 3-4 years now, I have mostly researched how those the metabolism and nervous system are working together. And I've been working on that, just not that mindfully when I wrote that book. So I think that's kind of like a new area where I went into a couple of years ago.
So that's something that came after the book through conversations and more research?
Mostly not conversations, but just researching more on how the body and mind is connected and writing up a new book. So I have actually 2 books published, and Winter Swimming being the first one, and the second one is called Thermalist. And Thermalist is currently being translated also to English, and it will be out, I think, next year. So fingers crossed that we get it out. But that book is more in depth, but still in very much layman language and very easy to read, but it's a little bit more full, you can say. I connect more things. You can probably tell that I got a little bit wiser, but and Winter Swimming is a little bit more light and more motivational, I would say, whereas Thermalist goes more into depth with the health benefits, my own research results, but also answering some of the questions which are not that easy, and some of them are being why are people connecting so good when they go into the cold, and what is happening around the whole community part of it here in the Nordics. And that I wanted to explain on a physiological level. So that was kind of like an important thing for me, because it's such a big thing here in the Nordics, right? And we see people go into the water, they are so happy, they are so connected, and the community part of it is just this mystery, which I often get questions about. But I wanted to explain it on like a physiological level. What is happening biochemistry in the cells that could explain why this connection is happening. And that is actually one of the things that I am also explaining in that book. So a little bit of a cliffhanger.
So going from observation to physiology and metabolism.
Yeah, exactly.
And so going to the other side, while people think about winter swimming, what are some of the things people get consistently wrong when they just off the top of their head think about cold water immersion or winter swimming?
There are a couple of things people misunderstand, I think. Some of them, mostly people outside of Scandinavia, I would say, think that longer and more is better, or colder is better. So I think the whole misconception around that is making potentially winter swimming something that might not be as beneficial for you. So it's about understanding the concept of it, which will make it healthy for you. More is not better, less is better, and less is more. And that is exactly what I have researched and what I am advocating for.
Yeah, we'll get into how long and how cold later on. So I'd like to get into the science of the cold shock response, which is what happens to the body when it's immersed in cold water. I think 5 degrees Celsius is considered very cold water, but it can be also higher for winter swimming or cold water immersion. So there are many pathways that you explain in the book, hormones, neurotransmitters that are involved in the cold shock response. And if we focus on the nervous system, there are 2 pathways that are activated, sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So I was wondering if you could walk us through the activation of these 2 systems, maybe place them on a timeline from walking to the water to immediate immersion, and then a few seconds and then minutes after the immersion.
Yeah, so let's say you are new to this, and that's a good question, Jonathan. I don't know, are you actually practicing cold exposure or?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Actually, I take cold showers almost every day, year round, and whenever I'm near water, I usually go in.
Okay, it
So,
calls you. Okay. Okay, great. Well, cold showers is something different, entirely different. And regarding the nervous system and what happens during the cold shock, it will be very different depending on whether you submerge into cold water or whether you actually take a cold shower. But let's stick to the immersing in cold water because that was your question. So imagine that we have a new person going into cold water. Um, they will be a little bit nervous, and that's okay. It's completely normal being a little bit scared about going into cold water because it's so uncomfortable for you. So that would trigger a little bit of anxiety in you, and you will already have a little bit of a raised or increased heart rate. So that's completely normal. You might
Mhm.
be a little bit anxious about what's going to happen next, right? You haven't tried it before. So with that, you have already actually activated your sympathetic nervous system. So it's very important as you approach the water that thinking about it, being mindful that you already are a little bit nervous about this, what's going to happen. It's super cold and you are deliberately actually going into something a little bit painful, maybe, right? So think about your breath. The breath is the key to your nervous system. If you can get a control over your breath work, then you can control your nervous system, and then you can get over breathe through the cold shock response. And that is one of the goals. So when you submerge into the cold water, use your breath to calm your nervous system down, slow breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, because it's difficult to only do it through the nose, both in and out. So it's okay to like breathe out through your mouth. You will activate your gasping reflex when you're new to this. It's impossible not to do that. So if you feel that you're gasping for air as you go into the cold water, that's normal. It's just physiology. It's just your body responding to something it is not known. It doesn't know yet. So in time, when you keep going into the cold water and you have gap, yeah, I mean 3 times is like that's where you will see a difference in how you respond to it. So after a couple of times the shock will be less, and you will also gasp a little bit less for air. Not that you will stop completely, but using your breath to calm your nervous system down, that is the key.
Mm. So, yeah, I have also questions about breath work. What kind of breath work do you use in your daily practice or while you're teaching winter swimming? And at what moment do you start the breath work? Is it immediately before getting into the water, a few minutes before when you're still on the jetty? And what is it based on? Is it what breath work have you studied, or is it basically just breathing in, breathing out, and trying to be mindful about your breath?
Yeah, so I have a specific method for this. It's called the thermalist method, which I teach my instructors. So we have made a whole concept around that. But in general, when you want to go into your cold plunge or you're going into open water, it's just about finding your rhythm in that. It's slow breathing. You can do it before. So you kind of like prime your body to that slow breathing, and then completely exhale before you go into the water. That is also a tip that I want to give out to people. So just exhale completely, because then you empty your lungs and you make room for that gasping to happen, because when you hyperventilate you will breathe very shallow, so you don't breathe that far down in your lungs. And if you don't exhale completely before you go in, then you won't have room for that little bit of air that you actually want to get in when you go into the cold water. And it will also prevent you from panicking when you are in the cold water and just run up again. And what happens to the heart rate,
because this is, so we're talking about the activation of the sympathetic nervous system. Does the breath work activate the parasympathetic? What's the balance, and at what time are both pathways activated? Because I think the parasympathetic nervous system allows you not to elevate blood pressure and heart rate too much while getting into this cold shock response.
Yeah, exactly. You're on point there, because when you go into the cold water, you will have an activation of your autonomic nervous system, which consists of both activating your sympathetic nervous system, that's where you feel that your heart rate goes up, as you said, but also the parasympathetic part of your nervous system. So that's where the body is signaling to lower your heart rate. So there's a little bit of a conflict for the heart. So one system wants the heart rate to increase and the other one wants it to go down, and that is where there is a little bit of a conflict there. That's also why I say that winter swimming or cold water immersions is not for everyone. If you have heart diseases, if you have unregulated high or low blood pressure, then I don't recommend this for you, because when you have this conflict between these two systems, you create what is called heart arrhythmias in the heart. And if you have a healthy heart, it's okay, and nothing bad is going to happen. But if you don't have a healthy heart, it might trigger something that we don't know. So it's just a precaution, I would say.
Okay, so it might trigger arrhythmia in people with heart disease. Okay.
Yeah, so it's just about being mindful about that. If you are not sure about that, this is to your listeners, then ask your doctor, because I cannot say whether it's good for you or not. You have to consult your own physician and ask if you are healthy enough.
Yeah. And is this situation of cold water immersion a unique example of how both nervous systems are activated simultaneously? And is it something that one should look for and could be activated either by breathwork or other methods?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it's quite unique, because when you go into the cold water and you have that simultaneous activation of your whole autonomic nervous system, it's really difficult to find in any other practices. I don't know if there's a breathwork technique where you can do this, but it's definitely something you don't want to do too much, because of the arrhythmias to the heart, right? So it's something that corresponds to the cold shock period of when you go into the cold water. So you want to get over that and either like get over to the parasympathetic part of the nervous system, and you want to activate that, but you don't want to stay in the full activation of both and have this conflict all the time. But I cannot come up with something that would correspond to it, any praxis. No.
Okay. So people who are now wondering how to get started, who want to get into winter swimming, that we can get into specifics of cold water immersion, because as you said, it's possible in a variety of settings. If we put cold showers apart from this, and we might get into them. So oceans, lakes, rivers, cold plunges are all possible. So if we take into consideration the factors that appear important, which is air temperature, skin temperature, the wind, the water temperature if you are outside, what is the best way? We touched to the breath work, but getting into the water, I suppose you have to get in very slowly, or does it change if you are a habituated winter swimmer? If you're walking into the ocean, or should you just go with running in,
Run.
get it over with.
Yeah. So how you do it? Yeah. I mean, people have different cold adaptations. So if you are an outdoor person, um, they tend to have a better cold adaptation compared to people who are more staying inside and avoiding
Hmm.
the cold. So, and it's a question about the hen and the egg here. So, if you are really not adapted to the cold, you will also have less adaptation to the cold when you then submerge into the cold. So, in that case, go slower, and it could also be a success if you just go up to your stomach, and you then want to run up again. It's a success because that might just tell you that you are not really ready to dive full in up to the neck, which I recommend that you do up to the neck or up to the shoulders. That is fine. You don't have to dunk your head.
Okay.
If you are adapted to this or an outdoors person, then you will find it much more easy to go into the cold water because the body really adapts to environmental cues, right? So if you are one who um, expose yourself to extreme temperatures, then your cells are primed for that. Because all our cells just want to adapt. We just want to survive, right? All our cells are just trying to make you survive. And it activates the brown fat, which is this kind of like a healthy fat that we have in our body. And the healthy fat, the brown fat, makes sure to keep our temperature in balance. And every time we go into cold air or, a cold wind or cold water or what it is, or even the sauna, which is the heat, the body just wants to adjust to that and make it stronger for next time. So the cells are adapting to that situation and making sure that you are stronger each time so the cells won't die because it essentially just wants you to survive. And that adaptation is exactly where all the health benefits are created. So when we are going into the cold water and we get adapted for each time, and you can actually now breathe through the cold shock and stay there for 1 minute maybe. It takes a little bit of practice, I would say, but when you can do that, then suddenly your body is getting stronger and more adapted to the cold. It has made mechanisms in the body to make you survive the colder longer. So it's really important that you don't force it too much. And you don't have to sit in the cold water for 16 minutes or something crazy like that, because it's just gonna, numb
Yeah,
all
you'll
your.
freeze.
Yeah, you would freeze. Of course, you would freeze, but you will also numb all your nerve endings, which then you cannot really feel the cold anymore. And that's why you sometimes see these extreme things happening online. I don't know if you've seen it, but people sitting in the cold water for 20 minutes and suddenly they cannot get up of the cold water
Mm.
because they are just totally numbed and they
Yes.
cannot move their legs anymore.
They feel
That
fine
is,
because they
they
can't
feel
feel
fine.
anything.
Yeah, exactly. They don't fear it because they cannot feel anything. But
Right.
then when they get up, they get this after drop effect where they start shivering. The warm blood in the core is suddenly running out to the veins in the cold skin and the cold tissue in your legs and your arms, and then suddenly you are cooled too much, and that is not a great thing. That's not where you want to be, and
Yeah.
the healthy things are not happening in that moment.
Yes. So we'll get back to brown fat and the afterdrop, two subjects I want to get to. So you've talked about the head, so there's no need to dunk the head, although I guess you could if you are habituated just
You
for,
could, you could.
I guess it depends. No, I'm interested because I can't, I grew up not in a big city, but I had the opportunity to go into very cold water in a glacier with
Wow.
icebergs, and I mean, it was sunny out, but I just, went into my underwear and went in and even dunked my head and felt fine. So I guess there is a difference, just maybe genetically between people who are more or less adapted to the cold, and then of course you can habituate if you do it longer. But would you say that people are more or less adapted, just based on, I guess, luck or?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the head dunking thing, in general, it's just not necessary. There's
Yeah.
no health benefits of doing it. If you want to feel refreshed or you want to activate your vagus nerve, then you can splash some water to the face. The thing
Yep.
about dunking the head is really that you do lose a lot of heat from the head, and because you activate the sympathetic nervous system, you would have a 30 to 40% lower blood flow to the brain, right? And when you at the same time maybe hyperventilating, you will get even less oxygen than to the brain. And and
Yes.
if you then also dunk the head, then you are definitely making sure that there is not that much flow to the brain, blood flow. And with blood, then comes oxygen, and then you might actually risk fainting. And we kind of don't want that. We just want to give out a good practice here, which is safe for people. So
Yes.
dunking the head is maybe it feels refreshing. I don't do it because when I'm out swimming in the cold sea, we have the salt water, and I don't want to get my hair into that. I mean, it will totally destroy it. So that's one reason. The other reason, there's absolutely no benefits of doing it.
Okay.
So there are many good reasons just to avoid it.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about cold showers, even though you said it is a different subject, but I guess many people who would like to get into cold immersion are not living near the ocean or don't have a cold plunge or bathtub. So, I mean, I certainly use a cold shower in the morning. So what are the advantages and limitations of cold showers when it comes to the cold shock response, even though, as you said, it's very different from cold water immersion?
Yes, the cold showers, it's great because it's accessible. I mean, to many people, it's accessible, right? So you have it right there in your shower. Everybody can go and have a cold shower. Almost everybody. I know that there are countries where the cold water is not getting that cold, but to most people, you can get it cold-ish, at least. So when you go into the cold shower, you will definitely activate the sympathetic nervous system. And stressing up like that is a good thing. It's not dangerous to get stressed if you do it in a healthy way, right? It's chronic stress, which is very unhealthy for you. And chronic stress is the big thing. I mean, that is what's creating all these lifestyle diseases. And
Sure.
as a physician, that this is the big killer in the world. So we want to decrease the chronic stress. And you can do that when you use also just a cold shower. So the cold shower helps you adapt also to the cold. It activates the brown fat. I know we're going to talk about that later. And it will also increase dopamine, noradrenaline in your brain, and you will have that energy kick. You will have that drive to go out and do whatever you want to do throughout the day. So it definitely serves some good health benefits for you also when it comes to your mood, when it comes to your energy and drive, but it also serves as a good activator of your metabolism.
Right. So a lot of good things can happen. Would you, what is the best way to do it? Is just starting the shower with the cold or alternating between hot and cold, or is it whatever you choose? There's no real difference here.
I think I think the alternation part can be a little bit tricky because usually people shower alone, and if you alternate between the hot and the cold, and if you can get it really, really cold, then you can also get a little bit dizzy about it because you are going from one extreme to the other and you are there alone. So I just want to say precautious about that. What I do recommend is that you take your normal hot shower and then you just end with the cold. So you just turn it on onto the cold water, and then you just stand there, see if you can breathe through it. 30 seconds is enough. There's a randomized controlled trial from the Netherlands, which shows that if you end your shower on the cold and you do that 30 seconds to 90 seconds, so in between that, you would have less sick days from work. And I think actually in time I've come to realize that's actually a pretty good outcome, because I mean it doesn't really matter there are many processes happening in the body when
Sure.
you go into the cold. But if you can have an outcome that shows that people feel more refreshed or feel less sick, and then they can go to work, then that's a pretty good outcome, because we do want people to go to work even though they feel a little bit, foggy or sloppy or whatever, and not really fresh in the morning. I mean, nobody feels super fresh the first 5 minutes in the morning. They have to wake up. But if you do that cold shower, it would just kickstart your day, and that might get people from deciding not to go to work to actually go to work. And that I do think that's a pretty good outcome. I cannot say whether this is because they have improved their immune system. There are studies, and even in my studies, we can see that there's improvement in the immune markers, but we don't have exactly that study where we really rigorously go into looking at the immune system and seeing that, oh, that is exactly what is going on. So you actually are more healthy on your immune system if you end your showers on the cold. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say especially during the winter, right? Because in the summer it's easier to get into the cold shower. So maybe starting winter days with a cold shower would be even more beneficial. And so you've touched upon this. There's a mental side to getting into the cold, and I want to talk about the effects of cold water immersion on mental health, and what you can tell us about how winter swimming might be beneficial to people suffering from depression.
Yeah, so definitely something big, I think. The mental health part of it is connected to your metabolism, is connected to your nervous system, of course, but it's also connected to your metabolism. So if you can lower the inflammation in the body by doing cold showers or doing cold water immersion, then that also affects actually your mood. It affects your so it affects your mood, and that's where we see the benefits. You can say stabilizing your mental health will help you not getting depressions and not get anxious, or maybe even prevent you from getting dementia. Dementia is a huge thing, right? So we know that depression and Alzheimer's disease, for example, those are actually rooted in inflammation. So the prevention part of it is definitely something that I think we should research more. We do miss the studies that really, really go into this and show improvement. But we have seen studies, and there are pilot studies going on at the moment, where we can see that people who are on depression medication, that they can actually, take less.
So the studies are comparing people with depression medication that are taking cold showers or cold plunges, and another group that is not. Is that how they are?
So actually, they don't have the control group. I don't think that they have a control group. I cannot really speak about the study. It's not published yet. So but I can. They follow a group of people with depression and other mental health diseases and issues. So I think it's really, really interesting that this is being looked into. That there are so many health benefits of using the cold, but it's so connected with the metabolism that I think that is very, very obvious, that we can see that when metabolic balance is not there in the body, you see an increase in mental health diseases. Isn't that crazy? That your physics is actually the key to your brain as well. So. But it makes sense, I think. So you can increase dopamine when you do a run, right? So, and you can increase noradrenaline when you do a run. You can increase it when you do a cold swim, and even when you go into a sauna. So it's all something that you do physically. So you should definitely think about the way that you live. What are you doing in your everyday life? Are you choosing behavior which triggers this, or are you choosing behavior which increases inflammation? These questions you need to ask yourself if you want to stay healthy, if you want to have a long life. Are you triggering your inflammation in a good or in a bad way?
Yeah, and these are all low-cost solutions, just moving, or even
Definitely.
not moving because you're not moving in the cold plunge, but you're still activating metabolism
Oh yeah,
and the sauna.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um, what about mindfulness? Do you think winter swimming or cold water immersion can create this mindful state? Not necessarily like meditation, but more in the sense of Ellen Langer's work, where one seeks to be totally present and engaged in one's surroundings.
Oh
Is
yeah,
that part of
definitely.
it? Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is a term that I call the control alt delete effect. So when you go into the cold water, it's not possible for you to be anywhere else or thinking about anything else but just being present and being the now. So everything that you worry about when you go into the cold water, the cold shock response is going to make you so present because the body reacts as if you're going to die. And you
Mm.
don't want to think about all your problems at work or whatever it is, your marriage problems or what you have to buy when you go to the grocery store. You cannot think about the future and you cannot think about the past when you are there. You are in the present. I think
Mm.
that mindset helps you keep a focus, but also you get out of your worries. So the control alt delete effect is actually deleting those negative thoughts. So when you get out of the water, your problems will still be there, but you will view them in another, you can say, with other eyes, because
Mm.
you just changed your brain chemistry. So your brain chemistry is determining how you view the world, right?
Mm.
So if you go out in the world with a lot of, good energy and neurotransmitters in your brain, you will view the world with those eyes. You cannot really swap back immediately because you changed the chemistry in your brain.
Mm.
So it can also be a tool to get out of those worries. If you are, circling around in those bad thoughts, and you cannot
Mhm.
really get out of it, take a cold dip, take a sauna, and that would make you swap out of it. So it's actually a pretty good tool. So that's how I've researched you can say, cold and heat and temperature as a therapy, because these are actually tools to reset your body, reset your metabolic balance, reset your nervous system, and get out of that worry and anxiety or depression state you are in. And I think on an everyday basis, these are pretty good tools.
And for people who don't have cold plunge or sauna and who need to reset during the day, what would be options? I think there are a lot of cold receptors on the face and on the hands. Would just dunking your head in very cold water, or even your hands, would be something that would have more or less the same effect, or just, I guess, getting into a cold shower?
I mean, yeah, so it's true. We had to have many co-receptors in the face and the hands and the feet as well. But this is also about the dose and the you can say the activation, the amount of activation. So if you dip your whole body into cold water, you will activate much more co-receptors than only if you dip your hand. But with that said, I want to say that if that is what you can do, is that what if you only have time for that, then that's better than nothing, right? It's also better to run 2 kilometers than not run at all, right? So if you
Yep.
can do that, then that do that for yourself, but don't expect to get all those health benefits that you see in the studies where, for example, that I have done, where we see activation in the metabolism and the glucose balance, for example. There you have to dip your body into the cold
Sure.
water. But there are studies showing that if you dip your hand into cold water, you will activate the brown fat, which is your metabolism and connection to your nervous system. So it does work, and you will have some of the benefits at least. But it hurts. I mean, I tested this in my studies. I had my participants actually making this stress test. So I wanted to see if how they responded to stress. If they overreacted to stress, they could not be part of my studies. So this was like a part of the screening. So they put their hands into a bucket of cold water for 4 minutes. And then I measured the blood pressure, heart rate, and stuff like that to see if they were, suitable for the studies. But what we did see is also that they activated the brown fat immediately. So it's the brown fat is there to help you balance your temperature and balance your nervous system, and making sure that even if you are exposed somewhere on the body, it will compensate.
So yes, exactly. So brown fat, just want to back up and say a little bit what it is. It's an organ that was discovered a long time ago, I think 1551, but then was largely ignored by the scientific community. It was thought to be only present in babies, newborns, because they don't have the ability to shiver, so as a way to heat up. And now we know that it's also present in adults, and I think the study, the article you published in 2021 reported many things, among other things that brown fat is present in all adults and still participates in keeping a stable body temperature even while out of the cold water, though that's mainly present, I think, in non-habituated winter swimmers. So could you tell us a little bit about what brown fat does, how it's activated by winter swimming, and maybe the results of this article?
Yeah, so the brown fat is our healthy fat, as I mentioned. We also have what we call maybe the bad fat. That's the white fat that we want to get rid of. We want to have less of that. So you can look at the white fat as our energy storage in the body. And then you have the brown fat, which is our energy expenditure in the body. So the brown fat, which is located around your central nervous system, very smart of our nature to build it like that, so it can get activated from the central nervous system, and then it uses fuel to increase the temperature in the body. So it's kind of like a small, you can say, fire in your body that lights up and increase the temperature when you get cold, for example. So it uses glucose and fat from the bloodstream as fuel to increase the temperature. So when you get cold receptors in the skin sends a signal to the brain where you have a temperature regulating center. It senses are you getting cold, are you getting hot? And then it increases noradrenaline in the brain and from your adrenal glands, and that activates the brown fat cells in the amount that is necessary, depending on how much of your body you're exposed to the cold or how cold it is. And then the activation is the outcome of that is increasing the temperature in the body. And the fuel that the cells need to increase that temperature, as I said, is sugar from the bloodstream and fat. So in that sense, brown fat can eat off the white fat. And that is how we have discovered since the millennium, and we have researched more and more, that brown fat activation can actually be used as a cure or a way to lower your body fat, so lose weight. So yes, that's why I have researched it.
Yeah, it's something that personally I've noticed just from going surfing in the winter. After a week of maybe 1 or 2 hours a day, even with a wetsuit, I always find that I've lost weight. Just because I think it's always because of the cold water, right? I guess it just activates my brown fat, even though I have a wetsuit. It's maybe 10, 12 degrees Celsius in the winter.
Yeah.
So, not very cold, but...
No, but cold enough. Cold enough. But I also want to say that probably it's also... Yeah, that's the thing people should be mindful around. So when you get that activation in your body, and afterwards you will feel hungry, and that that hunger can lead you to have these cravings for everything sweet, everything processed, and everything like a quick fix of something that could give you energy. So be mindful around that. It's something that is very intense, the hunger afterwards or the craving afterwards. So if you give into that, you will not lose the weight. That's very normal to look at the balance when you are a researcher, of course. So if you have that hunger afterwards, make sure that you eat the right kind of proteins and the right nutritions afterwards, that you don't go for the cravings, for the sweet and the fat afterwards. So yeah.
But yeah, it's just something that I noticed, and now I know why. So it's activation of the brown fat. So there's another way that the body heats up, and so I'd like to talk about shivering. Can you tell us why we shiver and what the body is trying to tell us when it starts to shiver?
Yeah, yeah, and I should answer that after your other question
Sure.
was what was my results from my study.
Yes.
Okay, so the results from my study showed that the winter swimmers, which were a group who were already habituated to the cold water, they've been swimming for a couple of seasons, and then we had a control group who did not swim in the cold water. They never have been exposed to that. And what we found was that the winter swimmers had a faster glucose clearance from the blood, meaning that the body was able to get the sugar from the bloodstream faster into the cells, and they had a faster insulin sensitivity, or better insulin sensitivity. And they had that because they have increased their metabolism, increased their way of activating that. And you do that, you train that when you go into the cold water. So you can say when we then looked at the brown fat, they had a much faster activation of the brown fat, increased probably because of increased mitochondria in the cells. And that is exactly what you want. You want more mitochondria in your cells, in your brown fat, in your muscle cells, because that keeps you younger and healthier and increases your longevity. So that is exactly what we want to do.
So it's the cold immersion that would stimulate mitochondria. Much
Yes.
like zone 2 training also
Yes.
stimulates mitochondria, so it's all part of longevity, if we could say it that way.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so shivering.
Yeah. The shiver.
The shiver.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's healthy to have a little bit of shivering because then you activate also your muscles, and that will increase your metabolism. And just again, be mindful that afterwards you will feel the hunger, and if you don't give in to that, then you should also lose or burn calories because of that. But I also want to say that it's not something that should be a goal for you, because we do see that when people are adapted to the cold, or when they get adapted to the cold, it's like a continuum, right? You get more and more adapted to it. And then you probably notice that you stop shivering at some point. You cannot really feel it anymore. And then some people, and this is also a misconception out there, that people think that they should stay in the cold water until they start shivering. And then they will just wait forever, and that's dangerous. So please don't do that. But what you can do is get out of the cold water after a few minutes. You already had enough, you activated what you need to do. And if you start shivering, that's fine, but don't keep it as a goal. If you shiver, cool enough with that, but at some point your body will be so adapted and good at activating those mitochondria in the cells and creating more mitochondria that the shivering will not be as you can say visual or easy to see, easy to feel, because the body is that you can say fast at responding to the cold. So better at contracting the blood vessels, better at activating the heat in the body, and that the muscles also do. So you're not only building mitochondria in those brown fat cells, you're also doing that in the muscles. I hope it was not too nerdy.
No, perfect.
And then you should, of course, end on the cold. I think that is also one of the you can say best observations that I've done, but not only from you can say research and reading the papers and doing the research myself. That came from practicing it myself as well. I did not connect the dots completely until I really started winter swimming myself, and ending on the cold and shivering on my couch. That was where I started asking these questions. What is exactly happening here? Is it good? Is it bad? And what happens when you actually stay cold and you tell your body, well, I'm actually not going to help you increase the heat in the body. You have to do that yourself. So one thing people need to know is that temperature equals metabolism. So when you can say push your body into one extreme temperature, then you activate your metabolism. And you want to do that because that's healthy, right? You want to lower that inflammation in the body, and to do that, you need to activate your metabolism. So push your body in an extreme temperature to the cold or to the heat, you will push your metabolism. And by staying cold, the body wants to get back in that temperature balance, the normal temperature. And for that, it would need to burn some energy in the body. And that is where you burn your calories. So end on the cold, and then you will have that increase in your metabolism. The Soberg principle, named by Professor Andrew Huberman. I didn't name it, but he did.
Yes, I remember. I remember hearing that. Just quickly, because we only have a few minutes left, how does this Soberg principle mesh with the idea of alternating between cold and sauna? Is it once you finished going back and forth, you end on cold? Because what happens to the body what happens to the after drop if you go into the sauna? Will it not happen faster because of the vasodilation created by the heat? So how do you balance that? How fast do you go from the cold to the heat, and what are the health benefits of alternating?
Yeah, so you wouldn't have to go too fast because of that. And you should definitely end on the cold. I mean, for some people, it's quite extreme. So if you're new to this, don't do too many rounds. Don't alternate too much. Just do one plunge, one sauna. That's fine. If you get, you can say, curious enough, or you get motivated, or you feel that you can do it, at some point you might feel that, and then you can end on the cold plunge and not with the sauna. It's not that the sauna or the heat is not pushing your metabolism. It is when you get out, because the body is trying to also dump the heat, and that also takes some energy to dump the heat. That's good too, but where you push it the most is where you are cold. So ending on the cold will push your metabolism to get back to that state of normal temperature, and that takes a little bit more energy, and it takes a little bit more time also. So it could be that your metabolism is actually working 4 or 5 hours after that last cold plunge to increase that metabolism, and you don't want to miss that, because that is a workout that is working for you even though you're not doing anything. So
perfect.
Don't miss out.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. So once again, your book Winter Swimming is already available everywhere books are sold, and your new book, The Thermalist, will be translated soon, I guess, to English and other languages.
Yes.
So stay tuned. People can find you online at soberginstitute.com. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This was the Blood Flow Podcast.